We're going to take a look at some organizational text structures that writers use to convey their information. So we're talking about nonfiction articles, nonfiction reading passages, things like that. And today we're actually going to focus only on compare and contrast. So we're only thinking about compare and contrast in this lesson. When we think about organizational text structures, because I know that's what the title says here, we're talking about, yes, compare and contrast, but it also has to do with things like cause and effect, problem solution, things like that. So we're just going to go ahead and focus on compare and contrast today. So here's the deal. Compare and contrast is an organizational structure that shows how certain topics are similar and how they're different. And that sounds very simple, but it's not quite so simple when you're a writer or when you're about to start writing something and you've got to think, okay, how am I going to organize my thoughts? How am I going to organize all the information I've got to put together? Am I going to explain some causes and then show the effects of it? Does that make sense for what I'm writing about? Or should I present two ideas and compare and contrast them? Should I explain things in a step-by-step sequential order? How am I going to organize what I'm trying to say? So that's why we're looking at compare and contrast by itself, so that we can get really clear on when writers are doing this and what it means for us as readers. So why do writers use compare and contrast? Well, basically it's to help the reader understand more about how one topic relates to another topic. Okay, it's when you're thinking about one topic, and then you might be looking at different opinions on the topic, what people have in common about that topic, where they differ. Okay, sometimes the unexpected happens when we're recording. Okay, so why it matters, okay? On the reader's side, when we know that something we're reading is organized in a compare-contrast sort of way, it actually helps us make more sense of what we're reading. Have you ever read something and you think, okay, I can't follow this. I don't know how this is laid out. This isn't making any sense. Well, maybe it's because your brain is trying to figure out, okay, is this cause and effect? Is this problem solution? Is it simply a description of something? Is it compare-contrast? Think about how much easier it would be for you to read something if you knew ahead of time how it was organized. That way your brain knows what to do with the information. Okay, so again, how does it help you? Well, it's kind of what we just talked about. It helps us as readers understand what's going on when a writer suddenly changes topics, right? It helps us to know what to expect when we're reading. So think of it like this, in your head right now, you might be thinking, oh, okay, I get it. So if hypothetically, if I'm reading a passage that talks about Takis and then it's talking about spicy Cheetos, maybe they're together in the same article because the writer is comparing them. So you might be thinking, oh, maybe that's why I was confused. At first I just thought the article was about Takis. And so it's like, okay, well now I know the whole article is probably going to switch back and forth about the two snacks, right? Now we don't have an article here about Takis and Cheetos. Okay, this is just a hypothetical situation, but it's like those times when you're reading something, you're thinking, oh, it's an article about this, and then suddenly the writer changes, and you're like, wait, what? Where did that come from? What? And so in your brain, if you know that the writer is going to be switching back and forth between the two topics, it's easier for you to make sense of. Okay, so we can tell, right, because most writers aren't going to just come out and tell us, right? But we can tell that an article is organized in a compare-contrast kind of way by noticing words like this, okay? So when we see writers use things like similar, different, alike, both, either, neither, compare, when they use words like similarities and differences, or when they say on the other hand, it's like they're about to switch to another issue, right? Likewise, or although, or, these are the kind of clue words that we see writers use that help us figure out in our brain that they're writing about something to compare it or to contrast it. And then, of course, when it's our turn to write, and if we're trying to compare and contrast two things, having these words helps us figure out what to say. It's like a word bank that we get to pick from. Okay, so those are some of the keywords to keep an eye out for. Okay, so just kind of in your head, you don't have to do this right now, but there are certain topics that lend themselves really well to the compare contrast organizational structure, right? There are certain topics that are perfect for compare contrast. And there are other topics that would not make sense for compare contrast, right? So if you're here on this video, you probably don't have to make a list right now, but this is just something to kind of think about as we go forward. Okay, now what's going to happen is I'm actually going to bring up your practice passages. So this is what we're going to do with the information. So we are going to look at the compare contrast organization here. Okay, so let's just look at a little easy passage. Okay, this is all it is right here. Passage number 1 is about PlayStation 4 Pro and Xbox One X. All right. If you're here with me on the video, I don't know that you can actually circle the keywords or phrases, but you can definitely think about them. We can point them out together, and then on your handout, you're actually going to fill out these 2 lines right here. Okay, but let's read this together for right now. Passage number 1. The PlayStation 4 Pro and the Xbox One X are 2 types of gaming consoles that offer incredible playing experiences. So right there, we know it's compare contrast, right? I mean, besides the fact that I told you it was, you can tell because the author does a good job of talking about both of them right from the get-go. Now, while they both have stunning, crisp images for game time, the PS4 Pro offers a better selection of actual games, whereas Xbox One X is actually more powerful. Both PS4 Pro and Xbox One X are expensive, around $400 or $500, depending on additional features. As opposed to the PS4 Pro, which doesn't play older games very well due to the changes in graphics standards, the Xbox One X will play old Xbox 360 games at a high level, which means your gaming library will be even bigger if you upgrade. Okay, now it's supposed to be an informational paragraph, right? But you can kind of tell, at least right now, you can kind of tell which gaming console the author is leaning towards, right? Even this one here, because he says, or she says, the Xbox One X will play old Xbox 360 games at a high level, which means your gaming library will be even bigger if you upgrade. So there's a little bit of opinion hidden in there. But so let's come over here. Let's think about this, okay? Circle the keywords or phrases related to the compare contrast text structure. So what were some of those keywords and phrases that you found? And if you want, we can actually go back to this. Wait, where'd it go? Okay, gotta love technology. Here we go. Okay, so we can actually go back to this, right? Do any of these words stand out to you as you look at the paragraph? I'm going to try to get these together on the same screen so that we can see together. Okay. So we have this phrase here, 2 types, right? We know we're comparing 2. Look at this one. We have the words while they both. Okay, so both is over here. That matches up because we're comparing the 2. We have the word both again because we're looking at it. Oh, and look at this one. As opposed to, okay, I don't know that ended up over here. As opposed to is not there, but it's another way of saying differences. It's almost another way of saying on the other hand, because you're changing topics, right? So there are a couple of clue words and phrases here that tell us that we're looking at the compare contrast text structure. Okay, so on your own, you're going to answer these 2 questions. Here's the first one, and on your paper, on your sheet, you actually have a box here that you can type right into. It's not on mine, but it's there on yours. So the first question you're going to answer is this one. The author of the passage uses the compare contrast text structure to help the reader understand what is the author's purpose here? What is he trying to help us understand? So that's what you're going to type here. The second question, look at this. The passage does not actually have a concluding sentence. Right? Did you notice that? It doesn't actually have one. So write a sentence that sums up the main idea of the passage. So not a little detail. We're not talking about how they both have crisp images. We're not talking about how much they both cost. Those are details. But think about one main idea for the passage that you can write here. Okay? Okay. This next paragraph actually is about rap music and country music and how similar they are. Most people think they have nothing in common, but they're actually very similar. So I'm going to let you read that one on your own. You will have a couple of boxes down here on your handout that you can use to fill out. And then after that, I will meet you in the next video.